Hey, welcome to another edition of Mississippi Stories. I'm your host, Marshall Ramsey, editor-at-large at Mississippi Today. Of course, you can check out all kinds of great coverage and more. Boy, this is going to be a smooth interview today. I'm already messing it up. You can find out more, see more Mississippi Stories episodes at MississippiToday.org. I'm very happy today to have a person who I really respect and like and have enjoyed spending time with, and somebody who I think is just a really special person to the state of Mississippi. We've got Pamela Junior is with us here today. She is, of course, the director of two museums, the Museum of Mississippi History and the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum in Jackson, Mississippi. And if you've not been to either one of those museums, you need to plan a visit soon. They are truly the crown jewels of our storytelling here in Mississippi. And of course, Pamela has got the very envious job of getting to be the director of that as well. She is a Jacksonian native and, of course, grew up right near Jackson State, where she graduated from, and did escape Mississippi for a few years to work a really interesting job that I can't wait to unpack a little bit, but did make her way back home and is here today to talk to us. Pamela, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This is going to be fun. I don't know of any that's always just fun, but this is going to be a fun Zoom today. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, that's almost an oxymoron, isn't it? A fun Zoom.
Yeah, because you get so many meetings and it's Zoom, and now teams. So.
I know. Isn't it weird though? It's funny because I put this jacket on today and I reached in the pocket and I found a hotel key from New Orleans from a speech that I gave right before the pandemic started.
Oh my God.
I need to send this to the museum, Put feels like
history.
A million and a half years ago. But recently, I guess when things kind of slowed down a little bit with COVID, I was able to come to the two museums and talk to some students. And that was so much fun. I really enjoyed it and got to spend a little time with them. And that was great. It was just fun to be there around people.
Around children, especially because they're just so innocent, and they some of them know what's going on, but some don't. But they wear their little mask, and that's just wonderful. Just keep them on. It's going to become a part of their life, I think. And I'm hating that I have to say that, but that seems like what's going to happen.
I know it is. It's almost like we're getting hit by one variant and then the next variant, and they all just change just enough, just like the cold virus every year. Hopefully, it's really weird because, you talk about history, and my grandmother lived through the 1918 flu. She was a really young girl then, but she said, my parents did a lot to protect me. Obviously they didn't want me seeing, and the small town they were in Tennessee didn't get hit as hard as, say, Philadelphia did. But she said, I remember the fear.
Yeah.
But everybody was scared.
Yeah.
And now I don't know if everybody's afraid or if they're just angry or they're upset, or it's like the plug wire's off the engine right now.
I think we have too much technology. We have too much information out there. I think if we had this one set of information, people wouldn't just be all over the place. You have YouTube, what I call university, and then you have the professionals who know the information. And I think people are afraid. My grandparents were both born in 1913. Of course, they're not still with us, but I was thinking about it. They were a part of a pandemic.
Yeah,
they were apart, but they made it through. So no, I just always wished I was able to talk to them about it, to see how they got through it. And living somewhere else, maybe out in a rural area, was even better because they didn't have to come to town all the time.
Yeah, they had other issues though they had to probably work through, I would imagine.
Oh, definitely.
I think about it though, and everybody's like, oh, these are the worst of times and everything. And going back to my grandparents, I can only imagine what it had to be like for them in 1941 on December 7th when they were tucking my parents into bed.
Mm-hmm.
And, thinking, okay, we just got through the Great Depression and now this is happening. I mean, the world's coming, and I think that's why the two museums are so important, is because if we don't understand history, we just don't really have any context. And so suddenly everything that hits us is a disaster every single day.
Yeah, just what I want people to understand is that, history can truly be really devastating to some people, but it's like the Bible. We get the Bible and we want to change the story. history is the same way. They see the history, it's in black and white. This is what happened, but it's always that people want to change the story. We can't change, we can't alter history. It happened. What do we do next to get beyond that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's two ways you can look at it. You can either try to spin it or whitewash it or paint over it or make it prettier or sugarcoat it or whatever metaphor you want to throw on top, or you can learn from it.
Yeah. And that's what's most important. Learn from it. Learn from it so you don't make the mistake again.
Yeah, that's always the handy part, not making the mistake again.
Yeah.
AKA, if my wife were here right now, she'd say, yeah, he's really bad about that, making the same mistake over and over and over. So.
It's like children. But the wonderful thing about the two Mississippi museums is that it's children friendly. Yeah, the Civil Rights Museum is very hard, but we can take our children in Gallery 3 and talk to them about people who were sheroes and heroes and even for me, I become childlike when I go into Gallery 3 and I see all these faces looking at me and understanding that they were just regular people who said to themselves, something needs to happen. I don't want to always sit in the back of the bus. I want to be able to vote. I want to have a great job. I want my legacies to have great jobs. I want them to be somebody. So we look at those folks for strength so that we continue to march and to continue to do what we need to do, because as it was said, that freedom isn't free. So we still have work to do even in the 21st century.
One of the challenges right now, and I was thinking about 15 years ago, I remember going to the World War II Museum and they had on the shelf in the gift shop World War II veteran hats, right?
Yeah.
They started getting kind of dusty because suddenly there weren't many World War II veterans left that were coming through the museum and anything. And, the civil rights, and I'm just thinking because Bob Moses passed recently, yes. But, all the people that were there who were eyewitnesses are now fading into history. And it's like, so what, the oral histories and the things that you're doing there are just that much more important because we're starting to lose the generation, the people that were on the ground. And I had a firsthand experience with that. We were at the post office of all places and it wasn't crowded. Imagine that. And there was a lady behind the counter and my sons are pretty much embarrassed the fact that I'll talk to anybody because I think everybody has a story and I'm always interested. But somehow the civil rights movement came up and she was a teenager at the time and they had gotten pulled over and they got charged a ticket by the police officer and they could have paid it right there or they could have gone to jail. And so she looked at my sons and she said, that was our electric bill for that month. We had to pay it or we would have gone to jail. And it was really good for my children to hear that because they could understand, A, that we've thankfully gotten past some of that, but two, that some of that still exists. And so, history is obviously, and what y'all do is just incredible.
I was out of town just recently visiting my oldest in Atlanta. And we were talking one evening just about the history lessons that I would teach them while driving them to school every morning. I had this 1993 Prelude when they were little and these two boys sitting in the back seat with their seatbelts on, and mama would have a lesson for them every day. Wow. And so he was like, thank you for that, mother, because that was important. You instilled so much in us about history, things that we needed to know. And I told them, porch stories are gone. So being in that prelude, that was my porch stories for them, telling them about their great-grandparents, people they never got a chance to meet, making them understand that, what we came from and who we are and how we have to build ourselves up, and that the last name of my grandparents was so important, the last names of their grandparents, in which they hold that last name, Junior, how important it was for them. And they learned a lot from that. So I'm grateful that I had the stories to tell them. And even today, my oldest calls me all the time, well, Mother, let's talk about this, because he works for the CDC. So this pandemic for him is interesting, and he has a master in public health. So this is all very interesting to him for me to talk about Mississippi and the pandemic during that time. So, yeah.
Oh, that's great. Now, you grew up, of course, in West Jackson, not too far from Jackson State, like I tried to do in the introduction, and I didn't really succeed.
You did great.
Oh, well, thank you. Sometimes it does pay to write things down, I suppose. But anyway, you grew up in the 60s and 70s, so you grew in a really transitional time for Mississippi, and you kind of were boots on the ground at that point, just getting to see it. I mean, literally, you saw things happening. Um,
Yeah.
Tell us how did that influence you and influence what you wanted to do with your life?
I was a very, and people say I was talkative, but I was really just very shy. And so I saw things, I kept it close to the vest. I would sit at home and write about things that I saw and that happened. My cousin who was passed on and another cousin, we were walking from Blackburn Junior High at that particular time when what happened at Jackson State. And I can remember that we were very curious, very nosy, but scared to be walking through the day after this happened. And there were Black Panthers on campus. And I can see them with their black on and the beret and them stopping us and say, "Hey, little sister, hey, little brother." And we were looking up like, okay, these guys are, they're big. And I had heard about them on TV, but never would ever think that I would meet them at all. But they gave us these black bands that they wanted us to wear in solidarity. I think with that was one of my first moments for me to say, okay, it's a connection here. It's in not knowing, because my grandparents really didn't talk a lot about it, but it was a connection that I needed to be a part of. This was bigger than my little scope of West Jackson. This was large because you had two guys that were murdered on campus. You had people protesting. It was big. So I wanted to connect in some kind of way. So what did I do? I started reading a lot. I started reading a lot, and I couldn't go to the march. They had a march that was from on Lynch Street that was going to campus. I couldn't do that because I was too young. But for me to just know and listen to adults who were talking about they were a part of this, I now realize that I was like a storehouse of information. And that was wonderful for me. I remember when you could drive through Jackson State's campus. Okay. I remember my grandparents driving me through, my grandfather and I, my mother and I going through the campus. I remember those things. So those are pieces that you can keep in your head, that when I was at Jackson State, then they decided, okay, we're going to have a plaza. We're going to close this area up. So being there when the plaza and professors saying to us, we don't want any of you majoring in plagiology. You need to come to class. Okay. and so those are the memories that I can hopefully one day be able to talk to my grandchildren about. And let them understand Jackson State and the many people, and just West Jackson, the many people, professors and students who lived in the area, and how West Jackson was so amazing during that time. And understanding that my grandfather built one of the houses that was in this area of West Jackson called the Canyon. And so now my job is to find out, how did a Black man in the 1940s working, who gave him a loan to be able to build a house?
Right.
Yeah.
No, and I was just thinking, because I remember my grandparents, I guess, bought their house in the late 30s for about $3,000, which was an exorbitant amount of money. You think about it. So, I mean, for him to get a loan that big, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. And he worked at a cleaners that was on Lynch Street. Yeah. It was called Magnolia Cleaners. And that's gone now, but I can still pass by the building. And I have a photograph of my grandfather with this big presser and bringing it down. He only had a second grade education, but he could count quicker than I could, and would always mess with me. I'm sending you up there to Jackson State College, and I can count faster than you. Now, what's the matter with that? Okay, what's the matter with that? So, yeah. And he used this book that was bought for me by my mother. It was the story of John F. Kennedy.
Oh, wow.
And every night, my grandfather would sit in the dining room. And again, he only had a second grade education, but he would read and he would call me in to ask me what that word was, or how to pronounce that word. And that book that I don't have anymore was how he taught himself to read, with that book about John F. Kennedy.
Can you find it out of print, or can you find it on? I mean, I would almost want to try to find a copy of that just to have on my desk all the time. Just
And I'm going to have to do that because I'm talking to you and my memories are, really coming back with things like that. But that was very important that he would have that book, or he would have the hymnal of the church that he was a member of. He would every night work on the songs because he was a lead singer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he and my grandmother both. They were lead singers, and they didn't go to the same church. One was United Methodist, and the other was God in Christ and Holiness. So it was just, I grew up in a smorgasbord, and my mom was a Baptist. Go figure.
Oh, wow. Well, I was going to ask you, did you get any of that musical talent?
Well, I did. My first solo at Mount Nebo Baptist Church was Jesus Loves Me. Mm-hmm. And I remember singing that. So, yeah, I did lead a lot of songs. But, I asked God one day, and I was living in Waycross, Georgia, and I asked God, I said, God, I left Waycross and I was singing and doing all this. I want to use my voice for something else. I want to be able to speak to the masses. And what I should have said was, okay, God, I want to keep singing, but I want to be able to speak to the masses, because you have to be very clear and intentional on what you ask God for, and He'll deliver those things to you. And so He gave me that voice to start speaking to the masses. And He said, okay, you'll use this other thing as singing. You can just do that as a hobby. So here we are.
You're an incredible storyteller. I was going to say, and you obviously, there's so much history that you can remember. Did you ever think about just writing it down and writing a book?
Yeah. One of the things, someone just asked me that today, so are you going to write a book? Yes, I am. Good. It's just that I want to find that person that's going to help motivate me to put something on paper. Mm-hmm. And I also want to finish up my chore here. God gives us moments. And so I had my moments at all the jobs. Now I'm in my moment here. So I have to give it everything that I have. And so when that time is to retire, then I go and I write that book and I do a little consulting. Hopefully there'll be some grandchildren somewhere, and I can just have that life as an old lady and enjoy and go around and tell some folks some old porch stories.
Yeah, you ought to set it up. Conversations in the car kind of deal.
That's a good one. Yeah. That's a really good one, Marshall. Because
you can do that free of charge.
I had some great stories in the vehicle with my boys, I tell you.
I was just thinking too, it's probably a good thing that you didn't live in Atlanta, because they would have learned a whole new vocabulary if you'd have been driving in Atlanta in the traffic.
Oh my God. Let me just tell you this, is that for all of the people who drive in Atlanta, truly, I respect you. Yeah. I totally respect you, because going 82 miles an hour all the time is something I just can't do.
Oh, and changing lanes without a blinker too. It's great.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Definitely.
But the good news is, if you have a Mississippi license plate, they will get out of your way.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and especially in a minivan. Trust me, I have experience from you. That's where my family's from. But, you went into education. I mean, that's what your degrees were in education, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But
did you ever think you were going to teach, or did you just think, no, there's other ways you can teach, I guess, than going to a school?
Well, let me be a little bit transparent here.
Okay.
It was education, but I started out in therapeutic recreation and special education. Okay. So, but I wanted to work more with the disabled and working with them in recreation and coming up with programs for them. Yeah. I went to Waycross, Georgia. I was walking through this park, and the grass was up to my shoulders. And I said to myself, I said out loud, somebody needs to be here that can redo this park. I wasn't married to my husband at that time. I was just visiting him. And so when we got married and I moved there permanently, I started out working at a zoning department. I was the first Black to work at the zoning department. I was the executive secretary for this director of zoning. So maybe a month later, this job came up. This guy had said, hey, I know you're new to the city. We are looking for someone to work in this community center. And I've seen your resume, blah, blah, blah. So, and I said, where's this park? And he told me, I said, my God, I'm supposed to be here. So I started, they gave me one guy who was a janitor, and it was him and I. And we repainted the whole facility. He mowed the grass. We brought in children. Day camp started, and there was a mental a challenge facility across the street for children who had Down syndrome. So I went across the street and said, "Hey, have you guys ever thought about Special Olympics? Have you ever?" No. I said, "Well, I want to do programming for you, and then maybe get you involved." I got him involved in Special Olympics, and I probably had about 200 volunteers and about 80 participants. And it was the best event ever. I did that for about 3 years until they said, okay, we're going to make you district coordinator for Special Olympics for 9 counties. And I did that, plus running the community center, having day camps, brought in a tennis court, brought in a basketball court, and brought in a swimming pool for that area. After 7 years, it was time for me to go, come back to Mississippi, 2 boys in tow, 7 months and 2 years old. And I had to start from scratch. Nobody knew me anymore in Jackson. It's something about when you leave, then you have to kind of like start over.
Yeah.
And I started over, and I started out as a secretary for the public works manager. And the manager said to me one day, "I've seen your resume. I know you're not going to be here with me long." I said, "I'm not, but I need to work. I have 2 sons now." And he said, "Okay, what if I put you out in public works and you'll be over all the ladies?" I said, "Fine." I was like, I'm never going to get back in my field. And so what happened, I went to an interview with the City of Jackson's Park and Recreation, and they hired me as a facilities coordinator. That meant I was on top of the roofs. I was checking out the buildings. And Maxine Lyles was the director of the Department of Human and Cultural Services. After 2 months, she brought me to her office. And she and A.C. Jimerson said, "We have a promotion for you." So they made me a supervisor. I was over all the community centers, all the staff members. We did programming. Yeah. And at some point in my life, Ruth Antoinette Batten Campbell came into my life. And she will tell you, if she was still alive, that this young lady did not like me. And I did not. She said, "But I saw something in you that was beautiful, and I saw myself in you, and I would never give up." And she didn't give up on me. And she told me one day, after she became like my second mother, "I'm tired of you playing. Your administrative skills are amazing, and a position is coming up." I'm trying to talk like Ruth Campbell. "And a position is coming up at Smith Robertson Museum and Culture Center, and I want you to apply." I said, "Mrs. Campbell, I don't know anything about." She said, No. "You know a lot about history. We have conversations about this all the time. I want you to apply, and then I want you to do your due diligence. So when the interview comes up, if you make it through the process, I want you to do your due diligence, because I'm not worried about you once you get in the interview." And I did everything I was supposed to do and got in that interview. And Dr. Jessie B. Mosley, the founder of Smith Robertson Museum and Culture Center, was in that interview. Oh. And when I finished, she said, "Hire her right now." And so I got the job, not realizing that when Richard Wright wrote the book Black Boy, he was talking about being in that school. I fell in love with Richard Wright when I read that book I think I was 11. And from there, I always thought about him. See, it's like patterns for me. It's always something that connects me with something. And I knew that I had Mrs. Campbell on my shoulders. I had Richard Wright on my shoulders. I had Jessie B. Mosley on my shoulders. And I had my grandmother and my mother. So I had no choice but to do the will of the people, which were those folks on my shoulders. So I was invested. I was invested in Smith Robertson. It was my life for 17 years. It was my life.
For some reason, I had forgotten you'd been there that long, and
Yeah.
that's incredible. And I would like I said it. I mentioned earlier, and I don't know if it was before we started recording or not, but it truly is just a really neat place. I remember, I think we did it through Leadership Jackson was the first
Yes.
time. Yeah, went through there. I was just like, okay. I mean, it's only a couple blocks away from the Capitol. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. We say a stone's throw away. And
Yeah.
you will always hear me say we, because I still feel like I'm a part of Smith Robertson, because that was my home. I wouldn't
ask.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't leave there sometimes at 10 o'clock at night.
Wow.
And and here's the thing. I was so invested in the community. That was important to me, to go around and pick up paper, to talk to the ministers in the area, because I've always been community driven. That's always been important to me. So I wanted them to know that if I'm invested not only in Smith Robertson, I'm invested in you. So let's pick up the paper. Let's get rid of the houses that are in the community. And I have to say that Harvey Johnson was the mayor when I first started out. And I went to him and a gentleman who was over planning, and we walked those streets in that neighborhood, and they allowed me to point out places. Let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of this. Let's do this. Let's do this. And I appreciated that, because he trusted me enough to want to build up that community.
You know, sometimes when we look backwards, when we're in that moment, when you were in Waycross, you probably couldn't make any sense of where you were going or what you were doing. But if you look at your whole career, everything has led you to where you are right now, where you're sitting in that seat. But I mean, at that time at Smith Robertson also too, that all that work you had done in Georgia had led. Did I read somewhere you were in Washington too? Washington?
Yeah. I was outside of Washington in Greenbelt, at Greenbelt National Park, and Catoctin Mountain Park, which was just like 45 minutes to an hour away. But then it was probably 2 hours away, but that was in Thurmont, Maryland. And then closer to DC in Greenbelt as a park ranger.
You were a park ranger. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So, wow.
Yeah.
So you had the hat and everything?
I had the hat. The only thing I didn't have was the gun. Okay. And the gun belt, but I would stop and write a ticket in a minute.
Wow.
I was talking to someone who, Rich Hardwood, who works with the Hardwood Foundation. And he was telling me that he still goes, he lives in the DC area, and he goes to Thurmont, to the national park there. And I was telling him that the first day that I got there, the people in town knew I was there, because it was basically white. You had the Marines who were a part of Camp David, because it was right there in the middle of Catoctin Mountain Park. Then you had myself and another young lady, and we were the only Black females in Thurmont, Maryland at that time. So they knew my name when I set up a bank account. They knew me. When I walked in places, hi Pam. And that was strange. But he told me that community, the demographics of that community have not changed. And that was back in the late 70s. So that's something that the demographics of that community have not changed all these years.
Well, did you feel welcome? I mean, did they make you, was there tension?
I was a park ranger. I was good.
Okay.
And then the Marines, they were good.
Yeah, I could imagine.
But I was told that it was a teacher there who never felt welcome, to the point she ended up leaving. But again, I was a park ranger, so I was in a different culture. And that. So I told the superintendent, can I be moved? Can I move to Greenbelt, where I can work with children? I can do more programming. And he said, sure. And he moved myself and my roommate to Greenbelt, and which was wonderful for us. It was an amazing experience. And from that, she went on to be to work in the prison system as a assistant director, or whatever you call people who work in prison. Yeah, so I was like, okay, so our paths kind of changed and went different ways, but we both majored in the same thing, and we're there both working as a park ranger. What was happening was that the National Park Service was trying to get more African Americans in the Park Service. Yeah. So we were a part of a program that came through Jackson State and all HBCUs. And I'm told that program is still there, and I'm trying to help get some students from Jackson State in that program now.
Oh, that would be great. And it's pretty amazing you ended up up toward DC and not say maybe Alaska or, I mean, it worked out okay for you, but I mean, still, what a cool job right out of college.
It was, and there were some people who went to Grand Teton. So there was some bear trappings going on. I was in the White Rapids and the Appalachians. I did some mountain rappelling. So I've told folks that there's some things that I've done that I would not do again. Using snakes as presentations and all that. No, I wouldn't do it. But a great experience for me. And one thing it did do, Marshall, is help with my career, as far as knowing about professionalism and customer service. Those things were very important, which helped me along my journey.
Definitely. It's like I said, I think about all the jobs I had, and probably one of the more important jobs I had right out of college. I was a high school janitor for a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it really just taught me a lot about attitude and so forth. I mean, I learned it the hard way, of course, over a year, but you just kind of, it's amazing how we can look back at our jobs and say, okay, this is what checks this box here. But once again, snake handling and rappelling. So those are going to be 2 chapters in your book too. So write all this down just to let you know that.
Yeah.
You mentioned, of course, you had went to Waycross to visit your husband, or your soon-to-be husband. How did you meet him, and why was he in Waycross, or was he from Waycross?
He's actually from Jackson. His family is from Jackson. They migrated to Jackson because his dad got a job, I think, at Tougaloo at that time as a comptroller. So they were here, and we met here. Okay. And after a while, we got married. And my life wasn't the best life in that marriage, but I was able to, as I tell people, I have great roots and great fortitude and tenacity that I developed from my grandfather. My grandfather was, and if I can use this word, he was a hell of a guy. And he was an amazing. So my strength always came from him. So I was able to grab my babies, and we got here. And they're very proud of what they've accomplished. But that's how I got to Waycross.
Okay, very good. Sorry, I was just kind of connecting a few dots there and a little bit on that. I am glad you made it back here, though, for sure. When and I remember the fight to get the museums and getting the Civil Rights Museum, and there were some unlikely heroes and all kinds of backstories. And at one point, I think I even offered up the Clarion Ledger building if somebody needed that to use, if you were looking for a building. But you ended up building where it is. How did you get contacted to be the head of the Civil Rights Museum? Because that's what you did first before you became overall head of both museums. How did
the story is something else, because I had been with the city for 28 years, Marshall. Yeah. And that's a long time. So I have always known to know when to hold and know when to fold. Yeah, that's always been a part of me.
That's a gift.
Yeah, and my head tells me it's time to go, Pam. It's time to go. So I had gone to our retirement system and talked to them about retiring. I had my years in, but not my age. And so what I did was I said, let me start putting some things together. So one of the first things I wanted to do, because I knew these museums were being built. And at that time, the young lady who was the program director of getting this the Civil Rights Building together, she was thinking about leaving. No, she wasn't thinking about leaving. So I knew she was here. So I was saying she was going to be the director. So at this particular time, I think she was gone by then. And I said, let me have a conversation with Katie about a docent position, a part-time job. So I came over, I set up a meeting with her. She was excited to have me in. And when I told her what I was interested in, she looked at me in her very calm demeanor and said, Pam, I thought you were coming to talk to me about being director of the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum. And I looked at her and said, no, I didn't. I hadn't really thought about it. My mind has been on retirement. And so I told her, I said, well, I have to consult with the head of the kingdom. That's God. Yeah. And let me consult with him, and I will give you an answer in the morning. So I walked out of the building, went back to Smith Robertson and said, well, just pray on it. And I did, in which I do all the time. I get on my knees and I pray, as my grandparent mother taught me to do. And I said, whatever I wake up with, that's what I'll do. And I knew it would be the right word. And when I opened my eyes, the words that came to me were to apply. That was the word, apply.
Wow.
And so I called Katie and said, Katie, I will apply. And she said, okay, we'll let you know when it's time to apply. I said, thank you. After that, Katie would only, hi, Pam, how are you? It was no, hey, and none of that. She was very professional with me, and I could appreciate that. And so I kept receiving, I got a call to say, it's time to apply for this position. But at that particular time, God wasn't telling me when to apply.
Right.
And so I said, okay. And so I kept getting these phone calls. Well, you haven't applied yet. I said, I will. And so maybe 3 days before the job was to go off the board, God said, apply. And by then I had everything in place. I had a CD of what I'd done in my lifetime as far as work is concerned, because what I did, I had never applied for a job before. And it had been a long time. So I went to young folks, they tell me the new things to do. And they started working with me. I gave my son my resume. He looked at it and cleaned it up for me. And I said, okay, I did everything I was supposed to do. Maybe about a month later, I got an interview and I walked out that door and I said, okay, I'm leaving it behind me. And I would pass by this, I would leave Smith Robertson and drive to the site and just point at it every day. Every day as I got off work, every day. A month later, I get a call from Katie. And well, I get a call from Cindy Gardner say, well, congratulations, we want to bring you in. And she told me, Katie's going to give you a call. And Katie gave me a call and we talked for a minute. And then I called my sons. And I get emotional because they were right there for me all the time for the job. And they were like, Mama, we told you, you had it. And then it settled in that I will be the inaugural director for the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum for the state of Mississippi. And I'm tearing up again because that was important for me and to understand how my past brought me to that very place of walking in on March 1st of 2017. But leaving the city was something for me. And it was Mr. Michael Ralph did not want me to leave without this big event that they did for me at the Art Center, Mississippi Art Gallery, Art Center. And it was amazing what they did for me. And he was right there. He said, Pam, you know, we love you. And you've done a lot for the city of Jackson, for the state of Mississippi. And we could not send you off going to this position. We don't want you to leave, but we could not send you off without it. So I just appreciate all of the times that I've had in every position. And, you know, God's kind of knocking on the door again to me because we have to know when to hold and know when to fold. So we're listening to him now.
And this is kind of a weird question, but when you hear that affirmative, when you hear that voice that says it's time for you to move, is it a feeling or, I mean, how do you know?
He just, what he does is he starts talking to me.
Yeah.
I see things. He says to me that, okay, the book, you know, you have a book to write. How can you do this? How can you work and put your time into this? There's some other paths that I want you to take before your time is up. And so with COVID being a part of our lifestyle now, and friends are passing on around me, and death is just it's just looming. So now he's talking to me and saying, these are the things that you need to write in your book. You have to be transparent in your book because your book is going to help some people. So that's what I am thinking about, and I want to give all I have to that time in writing that book and doing some consulting because there are not enough of us, of people that look like me in big positions in the museum field. And I've talked to Secretary Lonnie Bunch and we've had these conversations about that. So, you know, I want to help bring up some people to help them to understand that we have to be the keepers of our own history, and we have to be transparent and truthful in it. And so that's what I want to work on. And I've been doing a little bit of it. I'm mentoring some folks, and some of them have gone into some great positions in Atlanta and here in Jackson. So I'm excited as far as that's concerned, but I want to kind of get it out to the masses, not only in Mississippi, but some other places.
I'm glad to hear that you're mentoring because, I mean, like I said, you've got so much to offer and you're just, I I have to admit, I mean, you and I, when we do bump into each other and everything else, I just enjoy your company. I mean, it's just fun to
Thank
talk to you.
you.
You know, you fill the room with your energy and everything. And it's also been, you know, like I said, I've been a fan for a while, but it's fun to see you getting the recognition you deserve. So it's always nice when you get an honor and so forth. And,
Thank you.
you know, I loved hearing that about them throwing a huge party for you, because it's like,
Yeah.
okay. But let me ask you this, because you touched on something, and I feel in the same thing during the pandemic. It's just this, it's almost like a plug wires off, you just, I mean, I feel almost unease. And I don't know if it's the same thing, because like I said, I lost 3 friends last week to COVID, and it's just, and I don't know if it's just creating a sense of urgency in me or what, but it sounds like you've got the same thing, the same feeling going on right now too.
I do. You know, what I'm trying to do is, I've always been a workaholic. So vacations are important to me now. Talking to my boys and telling them that, sometimes you need that self-care. So all of this is coming because of COVID.
Yeah.
I need that time. I don't know, if we could all have that book that told us that end date.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to see it, but at least I would know that I had to get these things done. But now you have no sense of anything. So, and I just want to get those things done. And it's in the back of my head. I don't want to be on death's bed, and it may happen tomorrow, who knows? But if I'm given that time, then I don't want to say shoulda, coulda, woulda. I want to say that, and I want to leave that legacy and print for my grandchildren.
Yeah.
I want them to know that they're Pammy, as I've already come up with my name, Mr. Pammy.
You know that's not how it works.
I know.
Yeah.
But their Pammy left them this book that told them about her life, in which they can be able to tell their children about the life of Pammy and how their legacy is strong, and that they have to continue through all the struggles to keep going on and to never give up. That's just a part of who I am. And then, Marshall, I know you hear the jingles, and the jingles are important to me because the jingles are my foreparents, those people who were enslaved, my ancestors. And so when I hear this keeps me marching, this keeps me walking, this keeps me getting up every morning, because if they went through everything they went through on that slave ship, life is easy for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's really powerful. One of the things I've to jump to the museum real quick, and so like I said, I was glad to see when you got hired, because I thought, well, good. I mean, you're naturally suspect when the state tells its own story, and if the state's got a checkered past, then maybe it might try to tell maybe a little bit of a funny version of it. But like I said, it's very honest and very brutal but very true, and which it has to be. Mm-hmm. I mean, was that something that you really fought for, to make sure that the story that was told and everybody, I mean, it seemed like, though, that everybody was kind of on the page. It's like, look, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. Katie
Blunt is amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. All hail to Katie Blunt.
Yeah.
Because she's done a great job. And one of the things that I walked in, because I did lose a lot of friends knowing that I was going to work for the state. Wow. Because, I lost people that said that, you're going to be on their side now. But I saw it differently. I wanted to come in and make sure that things were correct. Yeah. That was important to me. But when I first got this big packet, because they started laying things on the desk where scholars had written the text, and I had to go through it. And I found that it was very blatant. It was very honest, very transparent. And that was important to me. And Gallery 8, I created Gallery 8. They were like, okay, we've done all this, 8 is yours. I was like, whoa. What I wanted to do is not only be transparent, but hear the words from the people people that walk into the museum, the people that understood our history, and to let their words be heard through the intercoms. Yeah. So, and to see these quotes on the walls, because now you have your own marching orders. What are you going to do? And those words were important to me, that Osceola McCarthy, if you want to be proud of yourself, you have got to do things you can be proud of. So with all of those things in place, transparency was important. And the women who were at the head of these museums, they understood that too. Yeah. It's here and it's truthful. And for people who've never walked into the museums because you've heard that things are not right and we weren't transparent, those things are not true.
Right.
And I'm looking into the camera and saying that come and see it for yourself and understand that the history of Mississippi is very complex. And in order to tell Mississippi's history, we have to tell the truth. And that's what we did.
You know, like I said, I liked Birmingham's museum quite a bit, and I like Memphis's too. And so maybe I had that in my head. That was kind of the bar. And like I said, I think that we've hit it even further past their museums. I mean, I hope nobody hears this and, get anybody in trouble. But like I said, it's just such a good job. And one of the things that I've enjoyed and just kind of being a fly on the wall walking through there is just hearing, adults and kids together and conversations being started. And, and it's just like, in a way, it was very cathartic to hear some of the stories that I was overhearing, because I'm always bad about that. I always like kind of following people around and listening to their conversations.
I do that too.
Yeah, I mean, I was at the World War II Museum, and there was like 100-year-old guy in a wheelchair telling his whole family all about what it was like to fly in the B-17 right in front of him. And I think that's really, truly the gift that a museum can do, is it can help launch those stories on that.
With the mask everybody's wearing these masks now. So a lot of people don't know who I am. So I can just kind of walk into the Museum of Mississippi History, walk into the Civil Rights Museum, and just kind of walk around. Some people know who I am, of course, but just to be with people and just hear them talk, say, well, hey, is this your first time coming? Yeah. And so what are you interested in knowing? And we'll talk and they'll, and I'll walk them around the museum sometimes if I have that time, because I just like to hear what people are saying, so that if there are any changes that we need to make, then we have to do that, because this place should be friendly to everybody that walks in here.
Yeah, and it's been a huge success too. Not only has it fulfilled the mission of school children coming through, and you've had quite a few, and but I just like the days when like a company will sponsor the admission, you'll have lines that literally wrap around the building, that sort of thing, and that has been just wonderful. I mean, from day one. And you had a snowstorm, of course, on day one. But
yes,
my joke on that, and I almost did this as a cartoon, was that two guys walking down Capitol Street in 1965, saying the day there's a Civil Rights Museum, the day Jackson will freeze over.
Oh yeah, that was wonderful.
It froze over, but it like I said, it's been a success on every single level on it. Even during the pandemic, you've been able to keep things going pretty well during that.
Yeah, the numbers are down, especially now with the Delta variant, and but we keep going. We have a new exhibition through public broadcasting, PBS now, called Unresolved, and they're unresolved cases of Africans, Americans being lynched in the United States, with 56 of those 151 names being from Mississippi. So, it's very interesting. So that would be up until October. We will be tolling the bells on Saturday, and I know this may come on after that, but of the death of Emmett Till 14 times. So, we're going to continue to do the work that we're supposed to do. The numbers are low. Of course, we have virtual reality, so we'll be doing virtual classroom settings for students, because if you can't come, we'll come to you. Right. And we'll come, we go as far as Washington State or Alaska, wherever they call us. We set up Zoom and we do classes with students. So we're going to keep doing what we're doing outdoors. We'll be here. We ain't, as I tell people, we ain't going anywhere. Right. Hopefully COVID will, but we're not going anywhere, and we'll be here to accommodate as many people as we have to.
Looking back on your career, and like I said, I've got a list here, just from doing my research here, of all the awards that you've won and so forth. What award that you received, it doesn't have to be a big one, it could be a big one or a small one or anything else, do you feel like that you're most proud of? Well,
the first one, because there are two. Yeah. The first one is a leadership award that I received from the Association of African American Museums.
Yeah.
That's my peers.
Yeah.
Saying to me that you are the consummate professional of your field. You've done the work, and we're proud of you. Thank you.
Yeah.
The second one is an award that I received from NAACP out of Tupelo, Mississippi. And the mayor of Tupelo gave me the key to the city.
Very nice.
And I look at that award a lot, and the other one from the association. Those two make me proud. Those two, if I had to pass those on to my sons to show my grandbabies, that would be the ones.
There's one article that I've read about you that had your favorites in it: favorite color, favorite food. I mean, favorite color, blue, I can live with that. But favorite food, salad, you and I are going to have to talk. Who says salad?
And you know what? You know what? It has not changed.
Okay.
From the time I was pregnant with my oldest son, Rashad, till now, that Rashad doesn't like salads at all, but my youngest does. But yes, salads. My color has changed, though. My favorite color is red or black. Those are my two favorite colors.
Okay, why the shift?
I don't know. Red is strong, and I like how I look in black.
Yeah, I mean, it looks good on me too. I get it. I totally get that. Your favorite vacation spot was Ghana, Africa?
And here's the thing, that was a wish, and I still haven't made it.
You haven't gotten there yet. Okay.
I haven't gotten there yet. But if I had to find a place, it would be Charleston, South Carolina.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and the islands, and I just love the field of Charleston and going back in time, and just that is one of the most amazing places that I'll tell everybody. Go to Charlestown. Go to Charlestown and visit. It's just, it takes you back. It really does.
Very, very cool. And your favorite quote is, and this is so you, it's never give up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But one more to add to that.
What's
is
that?
The one by the washerwoman out of Hattiesburg.
Yeah.
If you want to be proud of yourself, you have got to do things you can be proud of. That's important to me. And that's how I've lived my life, by doing things that I can be proud of myself. I've walked the path that has been thrown out. And a lot of people don't know their purpose.
Right.
It's so close to God when you find that purpose in your life. You are right there, because that's why you were molded and made to be that particular person. Out of millions of people, God said this person will be that. A lot of people don't ever get it. They don't find it. And some people at my age are still looking.
That's a tragedy. That's really a tragedy if you think
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that you're listed as is a motivational speaker.
Yeah.
I can believe that. I mean, I get, when I'm around you, I'm motivated on that. What advice would you give somebody in college right now to motivate them as they're setting up the rest of their life?
To find out who you are as a leader. Everybody's not born to be one, but it's there, because I didn't have it. I was very shy, and I let people walk in front of me, and I was a follower. Find that path. It's sometimes it can be a little broken down path, but find that edge for yourself, what you're really good at, and make that your own. Make that your own. Someone told me in the 10th grade that your voice is amazing. I didn't believe it.
Yeah.
She told me that. And then Tony Stewart told me, your voice is amazing. Tommy Stewart, as we called her back then, is amazing. I didn't believe her, but God was talking to me then. I just wasn't listening. Listen is what I would tell them. Listen.
I mean, that's the thing. I think we all stumble through life just not paying attention and blind. And we miss the angels amongst us.
Yeah.
That tell you. Yeah.
They're right there. They're your ancestors.
I'm really just trying to picture you as shy, though. I just can't.
Nobody can, but I was. I told somebody the other day, as a little kid, I found a photograph and I showed them that photograph. Every photograph is of me with my eyes closed.
Really?
Every photograph of me is with my eyes closed, and just very shy with big cheeks, but shy.
Oh, I can't wait to see that in the book.
Yeah.
This picture.
I got some stories.
Hurry up. You got to get that written. because I want to read it.
Okay, I'm going to start on it.
Thank you so much for spending time with us today. I've enjoyed this.
Thank you. It's been amazing. I've loved every minute of this. There's been some times that I've been interviewed that I was like, oh, when is this going to be over with? But this has been a great one. Thank you so much, Marshall, for inviting me.
Oh, anytime. And hopefully we'll get past this Delta thing and we'll all be able to see each other in person soon.
I hope so.
I want a tour of your office of the art, because I want to just seeing the pieces that I can see. I was like, I want to hear the stories behind all this.
And it's some stories behind each piece. Definitely. It's some stories.
Well, thank you for being such a great storyteller.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Hey, thank you for watching this episode of Mississippi Stories. Make sure to subscribe to the Mississippi Today YouTube channel and click the bell to be notified every time a new video uploads.